Welcome to the Human Kindness at Work podcast, where you'll hear inspiring stories of people just like you making a difference in their corner of the world. You'll hear how human kindness is at work and how you can be a part of it. I'm Jennifer Clark. Ready to be inspired? Here we go. How do you inspire an entire nation? My guest today is on a mission to do just that. And while that sounds incredibly ambitious, I've known my guest since we were both 12 years old. And let me tell you that if anyone can help inspire America, it's Cory Crowley.
Wow, that's the nicest introduction I've ever received.
Well, I'm not done. Cory is a husband. He's an entrepreneur, a former public servant on Capitol Hill, a trusted advisor and strategist to many prominent companies, and a regular public policy and political analyst on global news programs. And because that's not enough to fill his plate, he is also the executive vice president of the National Medal of Honor Foundation. Cory is part of an incredible team who are linking arms to make a difference in the United States of America. And it's an honor to bring you part of his story today. Welcome to the podcast, Cory Crowley.
I'm very glad to be with you.
Very glad to be with you, too. We're not going to talk about our 12-year-old selves because you couldn't pay me to go back to middle school.
Me either, so.
But we turned out okay, right?
We did.
Look at us now.
Just leave the past in the past.
We made it through that tumultuous time.
Yes.
Well, okay, so there are so many parts of your life that we could talk about where you are putting human kindness to work in your world. But I want to focus today on the Medal of Honor Foundation. You've been working on this for quite a while. And let's just start here. What is the Medal of Honor?
Well, the Medal of Honor is our nation's highest award for valor in combat. And just to put in perspective the kind of pyramid of honor that it represents, there have been 40 million people who've served in the United States Armed Forces since Abraham Lincoln created the Medal of Honor during the Civil War. And fewer than 4,000, actually just 3,528, have received the Medal of Honor in all of that 163 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty staggering.
Yeah. And the thing is, when it was first created, America, of course, had shrugged off Europe and England, and we didn't have any awards for valor because it seemed too European to us at the time. But Lincoln, during the Civil War, realized that there were people who were doing incredible feats to try to help keep the country together and to fight for the Union, and that needed to be recognized in some way. And so he created the Medal of Honor. It was the only military decoration that our country had for a long period of time. And now, if you're familiar with the military at all, there's Bronze Stars and Silver Stars and Flying Crosses and all kinds of additional awards you can get. So we did eventually, as a nation, adopt an honor and award system for the military, but none existed until 1861.
So the National Medal of Honor Foundation has three different branches, we could call them: the museum, the monument, and the Griffin Institute. Can you tell us briefly about each of those and why is the Medal of Honor the central focus of those?
Well, the whole idea was to first create a museum, and it was to tell these stories of ordinary Americans who took extraordinary action. And the impetus behind the museum wasn't to be a war museum or a history museum. The idea was to tell the stories of these individuals from their birth and their upbringing, those who were lucky enough to survive their Medal of Honor action and return back home to be with their families, tell the story about what they did afterwards, because many of them continued to contribute to society long after their military service in really meaningful ways. And so we wanted to become this big biography museum so that we could tell these stories in a way that gave every American an entry point to them, or anyone who visited the museum. If you show up and see Clint Romaché's exhibit in the museum, yes, Clint was involved in an extremely influential battle during the War on Terror, and movies have been made about it. But one of the first things you'll notice on his exhibit is his FFA jacket, Future Farmers of America. And there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids around the country who can relate to that. And so drawing this correlation that these really are ordinary people just like us. They came from every race, religion, every part of the country, every economic background. And when it came time to do something great, they did that on behalf of others. And we all have that within us. You don't have to put on the military uniform to do it. We
Mm.
all have the opportunity to be extraordinary for our families or our communities. In our schools, you can stand up to a bully and help another kid out. There's a lot of things that you can do. And so we use the interest that there is in the military action. That's a great hook, the valor, but really to pivot and talk about the values. And what I love about your podcast is that the values we talk about, we refer to all
Mhm.
the time as shared human values.
Yeah.
Courage and sacrifice and commitment and integrity are things all of us are born with.
Yeah.
What we need is just the strength and courage to tap into them and use them in those moments when they're required the most.
That's
So
so
so sorry.
beautiful.
So that was a very long introduction to answer your question, which was about the 3 parts of the project. So that museum, we looked for a home all over the country, somewhere to put it that made sense, that was easy to get to, centrally located, so that we could hopefully impact as many Americans and visitors as possible. We ultimately chose the Dallas, Texas region. It's easy to get to. It's in the middle of America. We decided this just because of the nature of the Medal of Honor and what it represents to our country, it does deserve a place of prominence in Washington, D.C. as well. So we
Mhm.
said, let's put a monument on the mall there. The House of Representatives has authorized us to do that and put it very near to the Lincoln Memorial since he created the medal. The
Oh,
Senate is
that's
actually
awesome.
slated to vote in October. So by the time this airs, it'll be hopefully done, and the Senate will have voted on it and passed the monument legislation so we can do that. And then the third part was the Griffin Institute. And to bring this kind of full circle to your introduction about when we met each other in middle school, the focus of our youth education programs is really on that middle school age, because we feel like that's where we can best impact young people with these values and with the
Yeah.
notion that you can carry these out in life in service to others. And so that programming asks students 3 questions, which are, who are you? Who do you want to be? And who can
Mm.
you become for others? And so that's what
That's
we want
good.
people to focus on as they're going through these lessons in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And we've had tremendous partners with the NFL and their character playbook program, and AT&T, their platform, the Achievery, which is free to students all around the world. And so these curriculums are now out there, and can be accessed by kids, and they're used in 29,000 schools around the country already. So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
so our partners have really allowed us to take something that we developed based on the Medal of Honor values and scale it up in a way that we never could have done on our own.
Hmm. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's been a tremendous, tremendous project, and it's been very well received, particularly the curriculums, as teachers are pulled in so many directions. But
Mhm.
one thing that we hear from all of them is values are so important. And, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where you say the word values and it could become misconstrued and a bad word in some spots, like patriotism and other things. But these kind of shared human values are what I think teachers are drawn towards, because they realize that every student needs them and needs to put them
Mm.
into practice in their life to be successful in anything, including the rest of their academic career. And
Yeah.
so the level of engagement from teachers and educators and superintendents has been tremendous.
That's so neat. What was your personal motivation for joining the Medal of Honor Foundation team?
Well, I got involved first when they were looking at putting the museum in Washington, D.C. And by the time the decision was made to put it in Texas, ultimately, I'd gotten to know so many of the recipients so well. And again, a little perspective. So you have the 40 million who served, the fewer than 4,000 who got the award. There's only 61 of those individuals alive today. Um,
Wow.
but there were about 72 when I started with the project. And unfortunately, we lost the last ones from World War II and the Korean
Mm.
conflict not that long ago. But I, once you start hearing their stories and hearing about the tremendous things that they did without regard for their own personal safety, you feel somewhat compelled to tell these stories and be
Mm,
part of using them to influence future generations to do similar things in the community around them and as we discussed in their own lives. But the humility of these guys was what
mm,
was most tremendous to me. And they genuinely have this belief, A, that they don't deserve what they got, that anyone, they'll tell you this, they think anyone in that position would have done the same thing.
mm.
I'd like to believe that's true, but I think we're all pragmatic enough to know it probably isn't,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But also, they want to continue to serve, and they viewed particularly the education portion of this, the institute, as a way that their stories would be able to continue public service long after they were gone.
Mm.
As part of these curriculums and as part of the museum's exhibits, they want to continue to be examples and inspire others, and this allows them in some ways to live forever. And so
Mm.
um, I just couldn't say no to helping bring that to life.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. You know this, but I had the opportunity to visit the museum for the first time last or
Yes.
in August, and it struck so many things about the stories struck me. It's an incredible, incredible gift to our country. So, listeners, if you are in the Dallas area or you want to make a trip, it is so worth it. It's absolutely stunning. But what struck me was what you just said. I kept reading and hearing while I was there. They didn't think very highly of themselves. Like they didn't consider themselves a hero. And, just this very raw humanity. And in a moment, they made a selfless decision for the sake of other people. And I think this is my personal belief that it's all that character that you're talking about instilling in middle school kids. The fruit of that is in a moment when it really matters, that's when the character comes out and it looks like a selfless act for the sake of others. So I think the whole thing is just woven together so beautifully. You're not just telling stories, but you're trying to make those stories possible for future generations to live out as well.
Exactly.
So,
And it's funny you said moments that matter because that's actually the name of our curriculum for middle school students.
whoa,
And
that's cool.
yeah,
I didn't
and
know that.
it's that very concept that, when we talk about the actions on
Mm,
the battlefield, we often use the phrase around the museum and in our own literature and terminology that the values and character that they displayed on the battlefield weren't learned there, they were brought there by these
yeah.
people. And so if we can instill them in young people now, then when they reach one of those moments that matter in life where they're asked to potentially do something extraordinary for others, they'll have the tools they need to do that. And hopefully it'll be
Mhm.
just a split second reaction as it was for someone like Kyle Carpenter to jump on a grenade and save the lives of his entire platoon.
Mm. Do you have a favorite story or one of what's one of your favorite stories that the museum tells?
Well, this story is probably one that hooked me the most when I was first getting involved in the project and one that compelled me to stay for as long as I have. And that's one of the living Medal of Honor recipients is General Patrick Brady. He was a dust off helicopter pilot. So they were medevac pilots in Vietnam, and they flew in to save people who had been wounded on the battlefield. The night he got his Medal of Honor, or the night he did the action for which he ultimately received the Medal of Honor, he was flying in dense fog in Vietnam, and he went through 5 helicopters that night and 5 crews because every time it got more and more dangerous and they'd get shot up trying to get one group of people out. But he knew there were more people who needed saved in there,
Mm,
both U.S. military service members and Vietnamese citizens. And so he went 5 different times with 5 different helicopters and 5 different crews. But one of the men he picked up that night was a guy named Webster Anderson. He was a big black fighter, and he went in and picked him up, and what was left of him, I should say, because Webster, in the first attack by the Vietnamese, a grenade was thrown into his position and it took off both of his legs.
mm,
He continued to fight. And in the next wave of the attack, a grenade came into their position. And before it detonated, he was able to throw it clear of his men. But in throwing it, it took off his left arm. And so Brady flew in that night in the fourth of the 5 missions and picked up Webster and got him delivered to the hospital. And miraculously, they saved his life. And Webster actually went on to earn the Medal of Honor as well. So it's one of only 2 Medal of Honor actions where both the person who saved someone in that action received a medal and the person who was saved because they saved others. And they used to go around to schools together and talk about these
Oh,
shared
wow.
values and character and commitment and integrity and sacrifice. And as Webster's been gone a while now, but as Brady tells the story of being in a school in Oklahoma one day, at the end of their remarks, they take Q&A, and a student said to Webster, "Mr. Anderson, if you know now if you knew now what would happen then, that it would cost you 2 legs and an arm, would you have done it?" And again, according to Brady, Webster's response was, "Son, I have 1 arm left, and my country can have it anytime they need it." And it's that selflessness and it's that level of commitment that you hear those stories and you think, the only thing I've been tasked with is telling them and bringing them to life and
Yeah.
helping build this museum. There's nothing I'm going to be asked to do that will be as hard as that. So it's very
Mhm.
easy to press on every day. Um,
Mm.
and those are the types of stories that people need to hear. And, Webster could have gone on to live a life of bitterness and could have become a recluse, but instead, he fought through those tough prosthetics back in the 70s and 80s and went
Mm.
school to school and shared his story with kids and continued to contribute to society in ways that have had an impact far beyond what he'll ever know. And that's the hope of this whole project.
Mm.
The museum itself is kind of a vault for these Medal of Honor values, but we know not everybody's going to be able to get here. And that's why the Institute and these programs are so important, because if the museum's the vault, then the Institute is the vehicle by which we can share them
Mm.
with everyone. And that's our ultimate goal, to inspire America.
Hmm. That's such a great goal.
Yeah.
uh, I'm reminded that you have a virtual simulation at the Museum of Patrick Brady's Mission.
Yes.
I did that when I was there, and it was incredible. Um, Such a cool way to put yourself in the story. So,
Yeah. The hard part I learned in this project about building a museum is that you start planning it 5 or 6 years before the day you'll open. And how do you know what technology will be cool by the time
right.
you open when you decide to invest in it that
Yeah.
far in advance? And so the dust off, Huey VR experience is one of them. The other one that's really cool is we call it virtual recipients, but you, in essence, take the living Medal of Honor recipients to a studio, and for 5 days, you just film them with a green screen, asking question after question. Most of them answered over 1,000 questions, and then
Wow.
through the power of AI and technology, we're able to allow guests of the museum to sit in these little comfy rooms, and you can have a conversation with a recipient and ask them absolutely anything from,
Mhm.
how'd you get the Medal of Honor? Where'd you grow up? What's your favorite ice cream? And they can answer it for you. And so, there'll be a day, and most recipients would tell you they hope this day will be hastened, that there won't be any living Medal of Honor recipients.
Mm.
Hopefully there'll be a day when things are peaceful and nobody has to be in a situation of jumping on grenades or doing those types of actions. And so we've preserved them in a way that even if there's no more living, you'll be able to sit down in perpetuity and have a conversation with the Pat Bradys and Jack Jacobses of the world, Melvin Morris and others.
It is a really surreal experience, and I did try to trick them in the conversation. I was like, "Surely they favorite ice cream, I tried that one, got that." I'm like, "What? Wait a second."
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the way it captures their personalities so perfectly
Yeah.
too. You ask General Brady his favorite ice cream, you get a very direct answer that it's vanilla with chocolate sauce on top. You ask Melvin Morris, and the first thing he says is, "Well, I have diabetes.
Yeah.
I can't eat ice cream." So it's human, and that's
Yeah.
the experience we want people to have, because as I said, these are ordinary people, and
Mhm.
and it's something we all have within us, the ability to do something extraordinary.
Mm. Why do you think it's important to tell these stories, especially now? Why do you think it's important?
I think, we live in divided times, and while some people may look and say we're more divided than we've ever been. I'd remind you that, brothers aren't taking arms against brothers and fathers like in the Civil War when Abraham Lincoln started this medal. Things are not great, but they're not awful. And telling the stories of what people are willing to do for others, even, I mentioned General Brady flying in to even save Vietnamese. I mean, life is precious, and it doesn't matter if it's the life of today's enemy or your friend.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves to be valued, and everyone deserves to be stood up for or saved or protected. And that's the stories that Medal of Honor recipients inspire us to tell and to become in our own lives and in our own ways. And so, in telling them, hopefully we do a good job. It's been our effort of saying, we're not a military recruiting facility. We're not saying go out and join the military to do this. What we're saying is look around you, because there's somebody struggling near you wherever you are. There's somebody who needs your kindness or your influence or your courage. And sometimes, even though we're all born with these values and have the endless ability to tap into them, and they're a resource you can never use up, you can keep giving and giving. But sometimes people lose their way and they don't know how to tap into them. And so when they see others who do it, it can then inspire them to rekindle that flame within themselves and continue to be better, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them.
That is beautiful. So beautiful. Cory, if listeners want to learn more about the Medal of Honor Foundation, the museum, the institute, the monument, where can they find you online and how do they visit?
Yeah, well, we're at mohmuseum.org, and they can learn all about the project from there. The museum sits right between Dallas and Fort Worth in North Texas in the city of Arlington, which if you ever tune in to watch a Dallas Cowboys game or a Texas Rangers game, or you're familiar with where the original Six Flags is, those things are kind of triangulated about 100 yards on either side of us. So it's a heavily foot trafficked area and an exciting area to come and visit, not just for the museum, but for everything else that you can do and take in while you're here. And so encourage you to visit. But if you can't, or if you're interested in these curriculums that we've been talking about for young people, even to do with your own family at home, they're available on AT&T's Achievery or on the NFL Foundation's website at Character Playbook. And so you can go in and at least see these stories and access them and talk to your kids and family about them and your neighbors and friends. And hopefully we all become a little bit better because of it.
Yeah, those are great resources. Cory, thank you for taking time to be with us today.
So glad to.
For sharing part of your story. People like you and the people whose stories you're telling, the people who call us as a nation to be more integrous and selfless, sacrificial, courageous, those voices are incredibly important, always, but especially when the voices causing division are really loud. So thank you for being that kind of person and for your leadership behind the scenes. You're inspiring us to remember who we are and who we can become. So we appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for helping give a voice to it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care, Cory.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to Human Kindness at Work. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd love to hear your story, whether it's an act of kindness you've received or one you've been a part of giving. Just visit humankindnessatwork.com and click on Share a Story. You never know, your story could inspire others to be a part of human kindness at work in their world. See you next time.